Have you ever laid in bed at 2 in the morning, so wondering if you're actually behind everyone else financially or if you're doing better than you think? Maybe you've scrolled past someone's vacation photos or their brand new car and quietly wondered how on earth they're paying for that. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on what the typical American actually looks like financially using real numbers, not guesses, not vibes, not what people post online. Some of these numbers might make you feel better. Some of them are going to be a genuine wake-up call. Either way, by the end, you'll know exactly where you actually stand. Let's start with the most obvious question, income. When your paycheck lands, are you above or below the typical worker in this country? Recent data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics puts median weekly earnings for a full-time worker at a little over $1,000. Which works out to somewhere around $52,000 a year before taxes. That's individual income, not household income, and median means exactly half of workers make more than that and half make less. If you're earning around $25 an hour, you're sitting right in the middle of the pack. But that $52,000 is a pre-tax number. Once federal taxes, state taxes, Social Security, and Medicare take their cut, a lot of people are actually taking home somewhere closer to $35,000 to $40,000 depending on where they live. Suddenly, that number feels a lot smaller. Income is only half the story though. What people actually do with that money once it lands is where things get genuinely revealing and honestly a little concerning. Let's talk retirement savings because this is where a lot of people are in for a surprise. According to the Federal Reserve's most recent survey, the median retirement balance among Americans who actually have a retirement account sits around $65,000. But here's the number that should really grab your attention. Roughly 1 out of every 4 Americans has no retirement account whatsoever. $0 saved for the day they stop working. That means a quarter of the people around you are planning to lean entirely on Social Security, assuming it's still fully funded by the time they get there. For the people who do have something saved, the numbers shift dramatically by age. Workers under 25 have a median balance under $2,000, which honestly isn't alarming on its own if you're just starting out. The 25 to 34 group sits around $14,000, which starts to feel thin considering these are people several years into their careers. By the time people hit 65 and older, the median balance climbs to roughly $88,000. That might sound like a reasonable cushion until you run the actual math. Using the standard 4% withdrawal guideline, $88,000 generates about $3,500 a year, or under $300 a month. Sit with that for a second. Could you cover groceries, utilities, and healthcare on $300 a month, even with your house fully paid off? For most people, that's simply not survivable, which tells you a lot about why this topic matters regardless of how far off retirement feels right now. Since so many people are counting on Social Security to fill that gap, it's worth knowing what it actually pays. The Social Security Administration reports the average monthly benefit at around $1,550, roughly $18,600 a year. That might sound workable if your mortgage is paid off. But remember, that's an average. If you had gaps in your work history or lower earning years, your benefit could land well below that. Some people plan around the opposite assumption entirely, treating Social Security as if it might not be there at all and building their retirement as though any benefit received is simply a bonus. Given the long-term funding pressures on the program, that's not an unreasonable way to think about it. Now let's shift to something that affects your life every single day, spending. The Bureau of Labor Statistics puts average household spending at around $5,500 a month, which adds up to roughly $67,000 a year. Think about what that actually implies. A household needs to bring home at least that much in after-tax income just to break even before a single dollar goes toward savings, investing, or building any real wealth. Housing eats the biggest share of that spending, which surprises nobody who's ever paid rent. The average household spends close to $1,900 a month on housing once you include rent or mortgage, insurance, taxes, and utilities, which comes out to over $22,000 a year just to keep a roof overhead. And if you live somewhere like San Francisco or New York, that number probably sounds almost quaint. Food is the next biggest line item, with households spending close to $700 a month on groceries and eating out combined over $8,000 a year just to keep everyone fed. Transportation adds another $900 a month. Once you factor in car payments, insurance, gas, and maintenance, nearly $11,000 a year just to get around. This is part of why financial planners often suggest keeping housing and transportation combined under half of your income. Add up $1,900 for housing and $900 for transportation, and you're already at $2,700 a month before touching food, healthcare, or anything else. Let's talk about something that quietly shapes almost every major financial decision you'll ever make: your credit score. According to Experian, the average FICO score in the country sits at 715, which lands comfortably in good credit territory on the 300 to 850 scale. That average tells you a decent chunk of people are managing the basics reasonably well, generally paying on time and keeping their balances in check. But don't let that number fool you into thinking everyone has it figured out. Plenty of people are still sitting in the 500s and low 600s, wondering why every loan offer they get comes with a punishing interest rate. Your score touches your mortgage rate, your car loan terms, and in some cases, even hiring decisions. The formula for keeping it healthy really isn't complicated. Pay on time, keep your balances low, and stop opening a new store card every time a cashier offers you 10% off. Speaking of credit, let's get into something uglier: credit card debt. The average household is currently carrying more than $9,000 in credit card balances. That's not a mortgage or a car loan buying something that holds value. That's $9,000 mostly spent on things that are probably sitting in a closet or long gone. What makes it worse is the interest rate attached to it, often 15 to 25% or higher. Carry $9,000 at 20% interest, and you're burning roughly $1,800 a year purely on interest, money that could be building wealth instead of padding a credit card company's profits. And a lot of that debt, if we're being honest, didn't come from emergencies. It came from clothes, electronics, takeout, and online orders that felt reasonable in the moment. The fix is simple, even if it isn't always easy. Pay your balance in full every month. And if you're already carrying a balance, treat paying it off as a higher priority than investing. Because there's no version of the stock market that reliably beats 20% interest working against you. Now let's talk about the number that probably tells you more about your financial health than any other single figure: net worth. It's simply everything you own minus everything you owe: your home, your car, your bank accounts, your retirement funds, all added up, then your mortgage, credit card debt, and any loans subtracted out. According to the Federal Reserve, the median household net worth in America sits around $122,000. Like retirement savings, this shifts a lot by age. Under 35, median net worth is under $14,000, which is completely normal at 25, but worth a serious look if you're closer to 35 and still sitting there. The 35 to 44 group sits around 91,000. 45 to 54 climbs to about 168,000. 55 to 64 reaches around 212,000, and 65 to 74 hits roughly 266,000. Here's the encouraging part in all of this: these milestones are genuinely achievable for most people with a steady income and a reasonable amount of discipline. Nobody needs to pick winning stocks or launch the next big startup to hit these numbers. It really comes down to consistently spending less than you earn and putting the difference to work. Which brings us to the last piece: how much people are actually saving. The Bureau of Economic Analysis puts the average American savings rate at around 6% of after-tax income. 6%. Now think about what that 6% actually has to cover. If some of it needs to go towards shorter-term goals, like a car or a down payment, there's not much left for real, long-term wealth building. Consider that the average home down payment runs around $62,000. the average kitchen remodel costs around $26,000, and a new car now averages close to $48,000. If you're only setting aside 6% of your income and trying to fund all of that, there's very little actually making it into a retirement account. Some where most financial professionals recommend saving somewhere between 10 and 15% specifically for retirement on top of whatever you're setting aside for everything else. So where does all of this leave you? If your income, your savings, your credit score, or your net worth are sitting above these averages, that's genuinely worth feeling good about, because a meaningful share of the country isn't there yet. And if some of these numbers hit a little too close to home, that's not a reason to panic. It's simply information. Now you actually know where the bar is, and more importantly, you know it's a lot lower than most people assume, which means closing that gap is far more within reach than the anxiety at 2 in the morning ever makes it feel.